to Hour 2 of the Mark Raymer Show. Glad you could be with us today. 501-823-0965 is our number. 823-0965. Pleasure to be joined by Mr. Dan Wass right now, author of the new book, Good Gun, Bad Guy. Dan, how are you?
Hey, Mark. Doing great. How are you?
I am very well, my friend. Glad to have you back on the program. We are anxiously awaiting to hear from Jan Morgan. She might have been tied up for a few minutes, and she will get with us as soon as she can, unless her plans have changed. Do you know anything about...
Well, Jan is quite the patriot and superhero. She's probably flying over Metropolis right now, saving lives and doing the... preaching the Second Amendment, word. So I'm not sure what she's doing, to tell you the truth, but hopefully she'll join us.
Let's hope so as well, and we will give her a shout out. You can go to the www.theguncaverange.com. Their phone number is 501-767-9944. She's the owner-operator of one of Arkansas's only few indoor shooting range. You can also shoot rifles as well as pistols at the Gun Cave. So, Dan, let's talk about this outstanding book, Good Gun, Bad Guy. This book will help us understand the mindset of the anti-gunner. Could you take a few minutes and explain your inspiration for writing the book, but also the term anti-gunner?
Yeah, well, I think, I got pretty frustrated when I started to recognize, anti-gunners using every strategy they could to demonize guns and gun owners, just to vilify the gun and make people fearful of guns and get people to hate gun owners. So I started looking into it, and I came from a pro-gun family, and I went anti-gun for a while. I fell into the propaganda and all the rhetoric and the false narrative. I fell right into that stuff for a while. So, but eventually I came out of it with a more logical perspective, and I started to recognize the value of firearms and how important it is not only that we keep our Second Amendment and our liberties, but to be able to protect ourselves and our families. And during my research for the book, and as the book started to, as I say, write itself, because it really did, it just started to come together almost magically. But I noticed that there's not only, it's not just some people like guns and some people don't. There's much more to it. On the anti-gun side, there are actually two categories of people, and I profile them in two categories. Or as Hillary Clinton would say, in two buckets. The first one is the anti-gunner. And the anti-gunner is typically someone who doesn't like guns, has no real experience, very scared of guns, has been misled by the media and the propaganda. They don't necessarily want our rights taken away, but they would be thrilled if guns were heavily regulated, and they'd even be happier if guns just magically disappeared. Those are the anti-gunners. The anti-Second Amendment radicals do want our rights taken away, and they fight hard every single day to make it happen. They're very influential. The anti-Second radicals are very influential over the anti-gunners, and they're constantly recruiting through propaganda and this false narrative and the terminology that they use and all sorts of tactics. Those, I like to say, those are the ones, the anti-Second radicals are the ones that will be cheering in the streets should our Second Amendment be repealed.
I just read a story. I'm sure you were doing something other than listening to the program the last hour. I just read a story where a Black Lives Matter leader was robbed at gunpoint. He's a college kid down in Houston, Texas, and now he's calling for more police protection.
Yeah.
But he could have protected himself if he was armed. And this goes
True.
for a man that is 6'4", 250 pounds. When you're staring down the gun of a barrel, I don't care how big you are, how tough you are. You're not going to be able. You're not going to cut. You're going to lose in that situation. You're going to get everything taken from you the way this gentleman did, his car, his wallet, everything else. But when that criminal turns their back on you and runs away, if you're armed, then you can get your stuff back at that point by defending yourself. And you may not want to shoot a hut. I understand our Christian belief goes against that, but if you've just been robbed and you're in a dangerous situation, then self-preservation has to take over. And this is why home invasions are down. We've seen home invasions in this nation drop precipitously over the last 20, 25 years. It's because criminals know now that we are an armed society, and they will not do home invasions if there's even a inkling of a chance of somebody being inside that home. Is that correct or not?
Well, that's true. Most criminals want to live to commit crime another day.
To see another day?
They don't want to die. So that's why the saying, an armed society is a polite society, it's so true, because the gun is an equalizer, especially for women who can't defend themselves against a man, let's say, who's much larger and stronger. The gun's a great equalizer, and so I'm a strong advocate for women, carrying concealed too. And the truth is, countless numbers of women are coming out now and getting their concealed. They're getting trained and they're getting educated. So yeah, it's a great equalizer. And you know what's ironic about that story? I briefly read that story. I didn't read the whole thing, but it's ironic how that Black Lives Matter guy, being so against the cops,
exactly.
All of a sudden now he wants a cop, right?
He is demanding more police protection.
Right, yeah. So he denounces it when it's convenient, and then he demands it when he needs it.
I love it when liberal ideology runs smack dab into cold hard reality. Hard reality wins more than not. Explain to us about how the anti-gunners and the left and the media, Dan, you do a great job in this book illustrating how the media and how all these factions try to keep us preoccupied by debating the Second Amendment, so it takes our eyes really off the prize, and the prize is they're trying to take our guns away. And you do an outstanding job in this book, but we don't want to give the book away, but kind of go around the edges here and tell us as much as you can about it, because I find this fascinating, and you do a great job of explaining it in the book, Good Gun, Bad Guy.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. And so what they want to do is make sure that we're always talking about, what restrictions are acceptable, what laws are good, what statistics are accurate, which ones aren't, how many rounds we can have in our magazine, all the nonsense. And we're over here fighting it and defending ourselves and debating all this stuff. Because what it does is it takes the focus off what's really going on. And what's really going on, gang violence, drugs, terrorism, all sorts of human violence, which is the real problem. But if we were to look at that, which is why they want to keep us focused over here on all the miscellaneous stuff, keep us occupied. If we were to really focus on what's really going on in the human violence arena, we would be forced to talk about all that stuff, and it would expose, the failed liberal policies, and they don't want us to look at that stuff.
Exactly, and that's what I was wanting to get into with Chan about, because let's take a carjacking, or let's take something that the perpetrator does not have a gun. They're just a big guy, and the rape situation. They're not expecting a 5'4", 115-pound woman to be packing heat, and therefore, if the guy does grab her, and if he does, eventually she's going to be able to get her hand into her pocket or into her purse or what have you, and possess that gun. And of course, her life is protected once that happens, and then she can defend herself properly, or at least hold the person or people at bay until the police can show up, because the police do everything they can for us. But however, there's not that many of them in large cities, unless you're in New York City, where there's a cop on every street corner. It's not the way it is here in Little Rock. Sometimes their response times, Dan, may be 5 to 7 to 9 minutes, and that girl is not going to be able to fight off a 6'2", 210-pound man. She's not going to win that fight. So it's imperative that that we have access. And of course, these are God-given rights; they are natural rights, but they wanted to take them away, and for a various number of reasons, to control a citizen. You can't control an armed citizenry, but you kind of go into that on how important it is for the most vulnerable of society to not only be armed, but know how to use the weapon. If you're going to carry it, know how to use it.
Well, yeah, I agree. These guys, I'm friends with a lot of cops, and these guys put their lives in danger every day, and they know that they're doing the absolute best they can. But here, the thing is, and I'll give you a couple numbers out of the book. The average response time is 10 minutes, and in Detroit, the quickest response time is 31 minutes, with an average of 58 minutes, and it may take as long as 115 minutes for the police to arrive. They're so preoccupied; they have so much stuff going on, and there's so many people that they can't possibly take care of everybody and protect everybody. So this is why we have the Second Amendment. This is part of the reason, so we can protect ourselves and our families, and we can't rely on anybody. If you have the typical anti-gunner will think that his baseball bat or his 9-iron will save him in his house as he gets broken in and robbed, and it's just ridiculous. It's a ridiculous notion. People have been programmed to believe this nonsense. The sad part is they believe it and they vote. And this is the problem. So we have to make people aware and help them see the reality that you're not going to defend yourself by yelling and screaming or calling a cop. You're not going to defend yourself against someone with a gun, that is, or a knife with your 9-iron. It's just
not going to happen. Obama said it the best. He said, if you bring a knife to a gunfight, you're in trouble. And
exactly.
and you are, unless you're able to throw it at somebody, unless you're deadly accurate with it. 9.9 times out of 10, you are in trouble. Dan, I need to take a break. When we come back, I want to go kind of in depth on how you educate the people that read this book. You want them to be informed as to what the anti-gunners are trying to do. And their tactics, and you expose their tactics, kind of like Saul Alinsky tactics in a different situation, but they're very similar. There's some parallels here, and that's what I want to get into with you on the other side of the break. We are talking with Dan Wass, author of Good Gun, Bad Guy, and we will be right back. 18 minutes past the hour. This is the Mark Raymer Show. All right, 22 past the hour. We are back with Dan Wass. Dan, let's get into people need to be armed with information. I always bring up Saul Alinsky and who he was, and it correlates to what's going on with all the propaganda that we see. But gun-free zones, I would not send my child to a school or anywhere. That's where criminals, people that want to go and do destruction to other human beings, this is where they can go that they know they will be free of any nobody can rebut them. There's nobody that can there's nobody there with a gun. They know this when they show up, and it's not an accident that all these tragedies occur in what is known as gun-free zones, and you do an outstanding job in the book Good Gun, Bad Guy on bringing the information and the tactics that they use to the readers and to the public. Discuss what you can about that. I know you don't want to go in depth about it, but discuss the information that you provide so people can arm themselves with intelligence.
Sure. Well, first of all, you mentioned gun-free zones, and just as a little side note, killers choose gun-free zones 70% of the time, and of the other 30%, where mass killings are committed, in areas where people are allowed to carry a gun, a third of those are stopped by a good guy with a gun. So there's a little statistic there for you. But terminology is probably the most fun and interesting part of the book because I talk about some of the stuff that they use, some of the terms that they use, like assault rifle and gun violence, and they use gun control as if the gun needs to be controlled, like the gun is going to, commit crimes all by itself.
Yeah,
so
it has legs, it has arms.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And then they use terms like high-powered, high-capacity.
Assault.
These were, assault weapon and stuff. These terms are just created. It's like marketing. They're marketing techniques that are created for people to be able to envision things easily. They want everybody to envision, assault rifle or gun violence as like the gun creating all this violence. They want you to visualize that stuff. They want to make it crystal clear, and they want to paint that pretty picture. Another one that's really interesting to me and very effective is Wild West. You've heard the term Wild West.
Right.
What do you think of when you hear the term Wild West? You think of people just going crazy, killing shooting each other. This is created so you will think that if we allow people to conceal carry or carry guns in public, that there are going to be shootouts, at the cafe, or in the in the produce section of the supermarket. It's ridiculous, but people buy it. They eat it up like candy, and they believe it. So the terminology is very important. It's very colorful and visual, and that's the idea.
And of course, we already know 50% of this society can be brainwashed into accepting anything, absolutely anything. And Dan, I did a story last hour where I read a story where murder rates have soared in the 25 largest cities, but I want to get to two. And the reason why is because these two cities, now Chicago has since changed in the last 6 months because their citizens were just getting murdered left and right. Chicago and Washington, D.C. did not, and Washington still, D.C. still does not allow you to own a gun there. And the criminal knows they can get away with, no pun intended, but they can get away with murder in these cities and towns, because there is not an armed public. Tell us how important it is to keep crime at bay. We've seen the numbers from the FBI. We've seen the numbers from law enforcement. They are true, but you never hear it in the media. And that's one of the great things about your book, is you expose all this information on how we're being lied to and deceived, that the gun actually keeps crime down, does it not?
Well, it does, and you are giving me the platform to be able to share this information. So you are very valuable in this whole thing too. So you're doing a great thing. Hopefully, all the people people listening in Little Rock and surrounding areas are getting this stuff.
And he's more than happy to take your phone calls, 823-0965. If you have a question for Dan Was, he's more than happy to take your phone calls, 823-0965. Go ahead, Dan. Sorry, I just wanted to get that in there.
No, that's good. But as far as violent crime, we're talking about there are about just over 1 million violent acts per year, and those are the ones that are documented. That's 1,163,000 or 163,000. So just over 1 million. But the thing is that overall national number is influenced heavily by specific areas. You're talking about Chicago, Washington, D.C., Detroit, all these, these pocket, primarily Democrat-run, anti-gun areas, places where people are not allowed to have, to protect themselves. These are the areas that are making that national number skyrocket. So the hypocrisy is, if they see that, these lawmakers see these numbers. So you got to ask yourself, why do they not say, wait a minute, this isn't working? These gun-free zones are creating this huge national number of violent crimes. Maybe we should not do this anymore. But no, they don't think right. They don't think like that, though. So I asked myself, do the high number of violent crimes hurt or help the anti-gun agenda? And it's clear that the high numbers help their agenda. Without those numbers, they wouldn't have the fuel to push their anti-gun agenda like they do.
That is so true. And, just alone in the city of Chicago, 3,000 plus shootings this year alone. And we see the people that can least afford to be hurt, the people that have nothing. These criminals can basically take over neighborhoods, can take over parts of town. And the standard of living for somebody who's trapped maybe in government housing or what have you, it's no life. And I wasn't aware until our first interview and talking to you that if you live in government housing anywhere across the country, one of the rules mandates that you are not allowed to own a gun. And I just find that I find that remarkable that our government is promoting defenseless citizens not being able to defend themselves and defend their children.
Yeah, well, that's why I wrote the book. The Good Gun, Bad Guy is about that stuff. It gets to that next layer of conversation that we're not talking about. So I hope everybody reads it, and there's a lot of good stuff in there, stuff that just isn't being discussed. And it's the important stuff, too. It's not your typical how many rounds should we have in our magazine type of thing. We're talking about the mindset. We're talking about the agenda. We're talking about the intent of the anti-gunners and what their mission is, why they're doing it, the fear that drives them, the anger that drives them, and the control strategies that drive them. That's what the book's about. And
one of the great, from my opinion and my point of view, you talk about strategies and then the tactics that they develop off these strategies to keep us arguing about trivial stuff, to keep us keep our eye off the prize. And that's one of the most fascinating things about this book. Tell our listeners, I know you can go to Amazon and get it, but I know you have a website where they can go purchase the book. Dan Wass will be here for the next 10, 15 minutes, so he's more than happy to answer your calls, 823-0965, if you have any Second Amendment questions. If you have any questions about gun-free zones or feeling safe when you're out at night, and I bring up stories every time I see one about a restaurant, about somebody coming into a restaurant and trying to strong arm them with a gun, and then an employee having a gun as well, and either confronting that person or just basically chase. As soon as a criminal sees that somebody else is armed, they're gone. Like Dan said, they want to live to tomorrow to get to the next person who doesn't have a gun. They are not going to cause a confrontation with somebody that's armed. That's just a fact. But tell our listeners where they can go and pick up this outstanding book.
GoodGunBadGuy.net.
GoodGunBadGuy.net.
GoodGunBadGuy.net, or you can go right to Amazon and search Good Gun, Bad Guy, and you can get it in paperback, hardcover, and I believe Kindle. Outstanding.
Now, the 115 minutes response time, did you find that this was that these were more that time was more synonymous with big cities or medium-sized cities or small cities, or just run the gambit?
Well, that the particular numbers that I gave you was Detroit.
Okay.
And I picked Detroit to look at because it was a big city, high crime area like we talked about.
Right.
So, that wouldn't mean, I don't know of course, I don't know the statistics across the country in all different types of areas.
Right.
But, my guess is that suburban areas are a little quicker, and where the police officers are less occupied, they're going to have a quicker response time. But I mean, hey, let's face it. Even if they were to get to you in 1 minute, it wouldn't be quick enough.
That can be an eternity.
Exactly.
Think about all the destruction that can take place in 1 minute. And, response times, I think they're 9-10 minutes here. My gosh, Dan, you can mutilate. I mean, you can get rid of a number of people in 10 minutes, and you're gone from the scene. Nobody knows you were there. Nobody knows what happened. It's we have to be able to protect ourselves, and this is one of the reasons why I was hoping Jan would take part in this conversation, because we are starting to see, and I'd love to know what your research that you did on this book found in this. There has to be more old people, or common sense would tell me that there has to be more elderly people and young women coming to indoor shooting ranges, getting certified with guns, going and practicing. There has to be more women and older people arming themselves this day because of the climate that we live in.
It's absolutely true. I was just at Jan's range at the gun cave, and there were older people, and I was surprised to see how many women were coming in and getting trained.
It's inspirational.
Yeah, it is. It really is. It's inspirational, and it's a great thing because people are getting more educated, and they realize how important it is. And I think it might be the kind of the hidden little secret that people don't really talk about. Because you'd be surprised how many people actually own guns and actually carry concealed, who just you wouldn't think it.
Right. We may have one on the line with us right now. We have Florence from Jacksonville. Florence, welcome to the program.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment about all the gun-free zones.
Okay.
Does anybody remember Sheriff Tommy Robinson when he was here in Arkansas?
Yes.
Remember what he did when we were having all everybody was being broken into, and all the shops had people, little stores that couldn't afford to or couldn't take care of themselves were being broken into. He came on, I guess it was radio and television at the time, and indicated you don't know when there's going to be someone behind the counter with a gun, and they are going to shoot you when you come in, if you come in and try and rob them. Everything went completely down. They cut them by 60%. They had so much, it was so effective, and that's what we would have if, in fact, you did not have gun-free zones. I mean, that to me it's illogical to think that somebody's going to be in a gun-free area. Of course, that's what they're going to hit. This is just
great
common
point,
knowledge.
Florence. Great point. The thing is, people have been trained to be so fearful of guns that they just want to stay away. It's almost like they wish it would just kind of all go away. Let's just have these guns go away, and everybody will be fine. Well, that's not going to happen. Guns are not going to go away. Mm-hmm. There's 300 million guns, I think, in this country, and mm-hmm. there are about 322 million people. So guns aren't going away anytime soon.
Well,
so
and
maybe
it isn't the gun that kills someone. It's the person that's coming in and attempting to hurt someone else. That's when they're killed. And if you have a gun and you're protecting yourself, why would you not use it to protect you or your family? That's ridiculous. So,
it is, because
just my opinion.
Great point,
Florence.
Well,
that's a great point. Thank you.
Thanks for the phone call. I've always said this is a very intelligent audience. Dan, I'm glad you got an illustration of it. Our audience members. Oh, thank you, Florence. Have a great day, and thanks for listening. Thanks for your phone call. Let's go to line 3. Reggie is in Hot Springs. Reggie, welcome to the program.
Hey, Mark.
How are you?
I'm good.
Hey,
Dan.
Reggie, is that our friend Reggie?
That's our friend Reggie.
All right.
Hey, I just wanted to say that I wasn't really interested in buying your book until I just thought at the last minute, well, I'm going to buy this book and see what he has to say. And it's not, the ideology that you present is not just about guns. You can use the same tactics the strategy that Mark was talking about against a school millage, a road tax, your local government. They use the same thing. It's those Saul Alinsky tactics that they use. They
Exactly.
come back and the false narrative, and I just want to, if there was any way I could encourage people to read this book, it's well worth the time.
Well, thank you.
Thanks,
thank
Reggie.
you, Reggie. Yeah, Reggie is very observant, and it's true. The tactics are not only reserved specifically for anti-gunners. You'll see these tactics coming from the left in a lot of different ways. And like one thing, I can give you a little piece here. One of the strategies is how anti-gun radicals will try to divide the opposition. Now, the saying, "United we stand, divided we fall."
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Right.
When President Obama talked about gun owners after the community college killing in Oregon, he said, "There are those who oppose any kind of common sense gun regulation." Now, this is to take gun owners and make them look irresponsible because, of course, you wouldn't want to be one of those people who, opposes anything that was common sense. And then he would say, "We want more gun laws," they'll say. Now, this is to make us look reckless. And then he went on to say, "The majority of responsible law-abiding gun owners know we should change these laws." Now, this tactic is used to make gun owners turn on each other. These are strategies to divide gun owners because, of course, you want to have common sense and you want to be seen as responsible. So the idea here is that gun owners will start to turn on other gun owners who publicly oppose these new responsible common sense gun laws, which happen to do nothing to save lives, by the way. Now, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yep.
Well, I want to give an example of what Reggie is talking about to the audience. This is what they mean when they come on and they get a Republican, they stick a microphone in front of their face and say, "How can you possibly want to give guns to mentally ill people?" The government will be the arbitrator on who's mentally ill, and I guarantee you all 100% of us that reside in this country will be deemed mentally ill by the government at some point in time. That's how they do it, and that's a reference to the great point that Reggie is making.
Yeah,
Hey, one other thing.
Go ahead.
Jan's teaching a class today. She's probably on the gun range right about now, so
I figured that may be where she was at.
that may be why she didn't call in. But, I noticed, too, you can call these convenience stores and branch banks, they're gun-free zones because evidently the management tells them, whenever they come in, just give them, comply, do what they say.
Give them what they want, and they'll be out of the store in 2 minutes, and nobody gets hurt, but that's capitulation.
But
and
I've noticed people that are armed are protecting, their self and the guy behind the counter, and you see that more and more. So
I wish business owners wouldn't fire these people either when they take up for their businesses. A lot of time, these guys that are armed don't own the businesses, and yet they get fired. That's the repercussions of protecting their business and defending somebody else's business. Is the poor guy that's making $8.25 an hour gets fired.
All right. Well, Dan, carry on.
God bless you,
thanks,
Reggie.
Good talking to you. Yeah, the fear that's put in people's hearts is just it's terrible. It's a terrible tactic, and I look at it like some people. There are people who will see a gun in public, and they will. All they can think of is people getting killed. They see a gun, and
right.
You got to think. To the people who see a gun and all you think about is death and killing, you have to ask yourself, maybe you've been misled, because I'll tell you,
you think?
I carry a gun, and that's the last thing, in my mind. And people who carry concealed, people who own guns are some of the most responsible, respectable people that I've ever met. And it's amazing because what they tell you, what the anti-gunners will tell you, is the exact opposite of reality in this.
And they know nothing about which they speak. They've never handled a gun. They've never shot a gun. All they're doing is perpetuating propaganda, and that's it.
They're like parrots.
Exactly. Polly want a cracker.
Well, exactly. I mean, you tell a parrot something enough times, it starts to just repeat it, and we can be manipulated like that. Human beings can be manipulated like that. We are all the time through major corporations will market products to us in that way. Good to the last drop. You know what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
If I say that, you don't need because you've been told that probably about 1 billion times. But the other thing, if I could just for a second get back to that dividing the opposition, because this is an important piece.
Divide and conquer.
Yeah, divide the right. So and I used the Obama piece there, his strategy. But Hillary Clinton just did the same thing with her deplorables comment. Now, most people think the deplorables comment was just to kind of take a shot at Trump supporters, but I think she said it to divide Trump supporters.
No doubt.
To make them kind of want to switch sides for the fear of being labeled.
No doubt.
In other words, that's it, guys. I'm out of here. I'm going to go sit at Hillary's popular table, so I'm not labeled, deplorable with you losers. And that was the idea. I think that was her intent. Was that 50% would leave for the fear of being labeled, and the other 50% would push them out for the fear of being associated with deplorables. But the thing is, her writers gave away the technique by using the half term when she said half of Trump supporters, because that you can see that as a tactic to divide. It was a dead giveaway to me when I heard it, and as you can see, it backfired. Because being labeled doesn't affect conservatives like it does liberals.
Dan, we have one more call we need to get to real quick.
Go ahead.
We need to get to a certified NRA instructor, owner and operator of the gun range, theguncaverange.com. You can go www.theguncaverange.com. Miss Jan Morgan. Jan, how are you?
Hey, great. I'm sorry to be running behind with you guys.
Well, that's
I
okay.
should have been on much earlier. I'm in the middle of teaching a pistol class today, and it just now got to the point where I could break and turn it over to someone else to do
You're
the law
performing important work and much needed work, because I think as people buy their weapons, they need to know how to use them safely, so that if a situation does arise in a public area, in a close, tight area, they know how to handle a pistol.
Safely and effectively.
How are you, Jan?
Oh, great. I'm sorry, Dan, that it took me so long to get on here. Gosh,
okay.
I hate that.
That's okay.
I got a
Glad
packed
to have
class
you.
today from people from 3 states. Yes, okay. So I missed the conversation, but I'm sure Dan Watts covered everything. He's amazing.
He did. Tell us, have you seen an increase in women, maybe young people and maybe older people who are first-time gun owners that come out to the gun cave for the very first time?
Absolutely, and I've talked to firearms instructors all over the country. There's been a dramatic increase in the number of women getting armed, first of all, and more specifically, women who are particularly vulnerable, senior citizens, getting a lot of seniors signing up for my classes. In fact, I had a 91-year-old woman sign up for my class about 6 months ago. She took the class. She came back every week after that for me to continue taking her to the next level, and now she's handling a semi-automatic like a boss. I put her video. Her name is Pearl, and she single-handedly, because she's 91 and had never touched a gun, and now she's handling a semi like a boss. Her video of her loading that gun, racking that slide, and annihilating a target at a rapid fire, I put that on my Facebook page, and it was so encouraging that thousands of women came on Facebook under that post and said, wow, okay, if this lady at 91 can start from scratch and learn to handle a gun like that, then what is my excuse? So she alone has been has had a tremendous impact on encouraging women to get armed and trained.
Well, they're the most vulnerable of our society, and a lot of time criminals prey on the most vulnerable who they don't think can defend themselves, the young. I'm not saying anything towards you, Jan, but women and the elderly. I mean, that's just
absolutely.
It's just a fact.
Sure, you bet. And I'm glad to see that women are getting involved and getting serious about their training. I
am too, because it helps. Or either one, I'd love to get your opinions. I read a story a couple of weeks ago to where gun ownership per household is rising, but it's still only 44%. Does that number shock either one of you?
It's a little surprising to me. I thought it was higher than that. I'm not so sure how they accurately measure that, because you know as well as I do, there are a number of states, including Arkansas, where you can purchase a firearm without it being registered. You don't have to register it with the government. And so there are a lot of firearms being purchased. And
people don't want to be honest with somebody that's calling them on the phone or however they're getting the data. They don't want to tell them the truth.
Exactly. So I think there are a lot more Americans armed than people realize, and there are a lot of Americans with firearms that no one knows about. So and there are people that get concealed handgun permits that are people that refuse to get concealed handgun licenses because they say, well, I don't want the government to know that I'm armed. See, that is false. When you get a concealed handgun license, it doesn't mean that your firearm or firearms are registered with the government. It simply means that they know that you have taken a class and have a license to carry. And yes, they assume that means you're armed. But if you have, 200 or 300 guns, firearms, it doesn't mean that they know all of your firearms and you don't register a specific firearm. It simply means that you've had a class and you have a license to carry concealed. What I'd like to see is for all of our states to follow the lead of 12 states in this country. Now, Missouri is the most recent to actually support constitutional carry. That's where we all need to be because there are too many women out there, single moms, who can't afford to take a pistol class, buy a pistol, and pay the state government for a license to carry. Exactly. And you shouldn't have to be, financially well off to do that. People living paycheck to paycheck, and even men who have to support a family, and they're living on trying to make it on a single paycheck. People are on tight budgets, and that shouldn't leave you defenseless. Our founders made it very clear with the Second Amendment that the right to bear arms is a basic human right. The right to defend life is a basic human right. It is not a privilege given from the government. There's a very, very big difference between the words right and privilege. And our founders specifically chose the word right because a right is something that can't be taken away. A privilege can be removed by the entity that gives it to you.
Exactly.
That's why our founder says the right of the people. It's a basic human right. So the Second Amendment is not your gun permit for all those people out there that say that. I want to knock heads together when I hear that. No, the Second Amendment is not your gun permit. The Second Amendment is a statement, a restrictive statement to the government that the citizens of this country have a right to keep and bear arms, and you, government, shall not infringe.
Jan, I want to get into the classes here in just a second. However, you wrote the foreword for this great book, Good Gun, Bad Guy, and Dan and I have been talking about the strategies and the tactics that he discusses in the term anti-gunner, and he really illustrates it in depth in this book. Tell us, it must have been a treat for you to write the foreword for a book that discusses all this and then educates people.
It was my privilege. It was a privilege for me to have her do it. Let me jump in.
It goes both ways.
Well, honestly, I get approached by authors all the time. I get books every week in the mail. You could ask my husband every week there are books arriving here from authors saying, would you please just take a look at this? Would you mention it on your Facebook page? I don't have time to read all these books. And honestly, I had never heard of Dan. I didn't know Dan. And he sent me a message saying, would you take a look at this draft? This is a draft for a book I'm writing, and I really like you to write the forward. And I was like, oh, well, yeah. And I put him off, and he kept being persistent, respectfully so. But I finally kind of felt bad because I told him, I said, okay, I'll read it, but then I didn't. And then he finally sent me one last message, and he was like, look, can you I just really need to know something because I'm publishing this in a few months, and and I was like, okay, fine, I'll look at it. So I started reading it. I couldn't put it down. I said, oh my gosh, this is the best Second Amendment book out there, period. And I was honored to be a part of it, and I'm so excited about what he offers in this book. Every gun owner should read it because, let's face it, we all have people in our lives, whether it's relatives or friends, who are anti-gun. And that is our problem. We do need to be able to talk to those people and engage with those people in a way that gives us an opportunity to make headway. And Dan tells us how to do that. Yelling NRA talking points is not working. We've tried it. It doesn't work. Most anti-gun people, facts don't work. That their positions are emotion-based, and so you have to get down on that emotional level and try to engage with them with some of the techniques that Dan talks about. And it's been very helpful for me too, because I'm on national TV just about every week on Fox News trying to debate these anti-gun people, and it's helped me understand how to win.
Knowledge is power. It's the same knowledge that once you find out who Saul Alinsky was and you see the tactics that the Democratic Party still today employs, it's all done by design. And Dan, take a few minutes here, and that is what you lay out in this book, Good Gun, Bad Guy. You lay out the strategies, you lay out the tactics based on those strategies, and it's basically propaganda once you inform yourself and once you gain the intelligence that you can get from this book.
Well, yeah, and thank you, Jan. It's an honor to have you on board with this thing. It really is. And Jan and I have talked a lot about this stuff, and there's some people that we can help, and some people that we can share this information with and help them see that they've been misled, they've been manipulated, and help them get the real data. And they can turn around. There are some of those people. There are some of them that just won't, that we can't help, and those are the ones. So either we help them or we defeat them. But we're going to do both as best we can, and if us gun owners can come together, and thankfully with people like Jan helping me out with this project, I think we're starting to get the message out there. I think we're starting to help people see that that all that stuff you're seeing on CNN, it's not true. It's not accurate when it comes to.
No, it's not.
It's propaganda.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So we're doing our best to get the word out there, and I think Jan has been a huge help for me. So
Jan, thank you both. I have 45 seconds. Tell us if there are females or if there's anyone out there maybe intimidated by a pistol or a rifle, what have you. Tell us about your classes.
Call me. Call me at the Gun Cave, and we'll get you in here. There are people that take our classes not only from all over the United States. We've actually trained people now from all over the United States. Every state in the country has had people in here taking our classes, but also from 8 different countries. All you got to do is call the range. You have to pre-register for my classes. Ladies, you come take my class. I'll turn you into a gun chick. It's just that simple. That
number is 501-767-9944. 501-767-9944. You can go to www.theguncaverange.com. Outstanding website, easy to navigate. Everything you need to know is located right there. I want to thank both of you. I've got very few seconds right here. In fact, there's the music right there. Thank you both for giving me an hour of your time today, and God bless you both. And Dan and Jan, keep up the good work.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Jan.
All right. You bet. Bye-bye.
All right, that will do it for today. Remember, a couple of weeks we go to on October 8th we go to Sundays, but for right now, I'll meet you right back here next Saturday. 2 p.m. is game time. Until then, God bless you. Thanks for listening. I hope you have a great weekend.